Welcome to Lesson 5 for the social media web app. We're going to start off with the timestamp function. A lot of choices, a lot of plugins you can use to get the correct timing stamp. I'm using something that I'm going to build myself because I need it to be a specific way. And it's really not that difficult. I mean, you can always plug in something. That's a whole bunch of stuff you can plug in that you won't be using. Or you could simply type out something that's pretty basic and will do exactly what you want. And as you can see from my other works, a lot of times you'll be using it this way, and it'll be useful because you need to kind of thin down what date was done when. And so I need it to be very, very specific. So we're going to use really basic JavaScript. The date method here and the get date, all that stuff is already pre-built into JavaScript. So I just need to get those things lined up correctly so that when I get my user functionality ready for my messaging service, the timestamp looks exactly like the way I want. As you can see, I'm doing stuff that you would basically learn how to do your first class in any JavaScript class, is getting the time. Now, granted, this is just going to go off at the time of whatever computer you're writing on, and so which case, you can always remember that, or if you want to do this on the backside, it would be wherever the actual server is located would be the time that it's going to be going off of. So there we go. Now, I also, within this timestamp, I'm going to need things to have zeros in front of them if they're below 10 for the day. That's also going to be for the hour and the minutes as well. It's not a big deal. Just the way it's punching it out when you use the JavaScript thing is it's basically something that I need to add a zero to for the string, for the searchable filters that you'll see. But I'll do this thing one time, and then you'll see that I'll be using it like in applications all the time. So it's just something gets referred to a lot. Now, there's other things that, like JavaScript will let you do, like some kind of specific timestamp based on Greenwich Mean Time. I'm not using that either, but I will need to basically tell it things where, let's say, I need to know whether it's PM or whether it's AM, and so I'm going to be asking how many the hours basically that'll be prepared, and say if this is below 12 then it's AM, and if it's above 12 then it's PM. Not a big deal, but I'm just kind of walking through as I type in what I'm doing. Yeah. And then we'll do an else for the AM. And then the return will be a string that I'm going to compile together. And this is what it will return. As you can see from the logging from any kind of transactions, this is the perfect timestamp. So you can delve down into the logging transactions really easily with this kind of usage. Year, month, day, hours, all in this order is really easy to figure out filtering time. Let's go ahead and export this. Okay, the client-side messenger module. So this module is actually named Stage. The reason it is because the messenger used to be a module, or actually a web app that I had living on its own, and it was the main stage of that app. And so in which case I've just included that app in this one and combined them, and I just kept the name Stage. So I guess you could call Stage in reference to the actual where the messages take place, and then probably the best way is that. Now here's the timestamp function that we saw me build a little while ago, something that gets used all the time. It's super handy. moment, I think, is a lot of things that some people would usually use instead of writing their own. Moment's fine. It has all sorts of formats and whatnot. It's something you'd have to plug in, and I fear if I can write it in like a few kilobytes, then I don't need to install anything. So that's the reasoning behind it. Now let's go ahead and export stage before we get started, so I don't forget. It's one of my main things I always forget. And then we'll start off with the use effect loaded option, which starts off as false, and once it runs once, we'll turn it to true. And let's start putting this together. We got to build up all of our states, variables, and we'll just usually prepare those first. Now, contact list is something that we're going to be able to grab based on all the messages we previously have stored. So it will remember who you've been in contact with based on who you have within your messaging, anybody you've been active with. Let's go ahead and pass the config over so I don't have to write it in here. So we'll pass it in from its parent. Okay, let's start off with a function called, let's go ahead and do the client side post. So I'm going to post a message here. And we need to determine a few things that's going to be passed through as arguments for this function. So if the user is not the recipient, then within the email field, we need to go ahead and put in the value of recipient. And then vice versa would be here. And so there we go. We're just putting the value of either the initiator or the recipient within the email field based on who's firing off the post. So here we're saying the post is going to be the one that's been selected, list item for which post. So we sent that through on the top argument. And from here we're basically doing more of, looks like kind of checking things off. So visually we're having little checkboxes. Bear with me, it's been almost 2 years since I wrote this, and now I'm going back and just copying it, so I'm reading as I go. So the active, if the active group item which equals data post value, which is our post. We need to remove the active. And we're going to be removing one of the font awesome classes. And here we'll be changing the font awesome class. So basically when you click on it, it changes from the filled in checkmark, or the non-filled in checkbox, to the filled in one. So it knows which one you're talking about. Visually the user will understand it from the background being filled in on the checkbox. And the value at the post, we're going to go ahead and undo the check mark. And we'll do the opposite here. And when we go through and test all this, you'll see the difference. When something's selected, it will show you this visual. There we go. That's actually incorrect. That just broke the selector. It looks like I need to put a bracket at the end of it. And if I can recall correctly, when I came through to fix this, I put the bracket in and fixed all this. So yeah, there's a, as you can see here, let me see. That bracket after data post needs to be after the closing of the apostrophe. A little bit of a mess up, so. Anyway, this is what happens when I just copy stuff. It's pretty difficult after a while. You get kind of tunnel vision. So let's get on with the client side, get data. So I've got a conversation called run convo. Now this thing is something that is going to be running quite a bit. We got to go check on stuff all the time. So run convo gets hit a lot. We're going to be needing to pull an Axios get and fire it off to the messages route. It's going to have a parameter of user email, and on the other side it'll be called email. Pretty sure, but if not, we'll find out. And we need to have whatever the response is. We take that data and we set our conversation with it. So basically we can run this all the time and just keep checking to see if there's new messages. It's just an ongoing set timeout. And here, if we have something new and we need to set it, we're going to run through the responses. And we determine who the initiator is. An interesting thing about this, how you delete, basically how you delete things. So if you've seen something, it'll say viewed, and if you want to clear it, and you clear it, it'll actually add the word viewed, -viewed to it. If both the recipient and the initiator have clicked cleared, that means that we've basically pasted the -viewed on top of their data, and it knows to automatically delete it. So this is an interesting concept with our messenger, is it's not keeping any record of anything. And it's kind of by design, because it's just a messaging system, and that would really fill up the database for just random crap. And I think people would have a better feeling about this application knowing that nothing they're saying is being like saved. It makes for a very lightweight application, and people trust it more. I don't know why you'd want me to save any conversation of anything. It doesn't matter to me. Now here we're building out, let me see here, our temp contacts. And so in which case we can have our contact list can be available. We're going to go through each one of them and find out if this person's already in the contact list, then we won't put them twice. And if they are not in there, meaning a -1 when we're up here, then we put them in the contact list. It's just an easier way for them to select who they'd like to discuss stuff with on the messaging app. So here we'll do a post message. So we'll just do Axios post, and here's our route we need to get to. Type in our path, and here we're actually going to be firing off some data that was sent to us as opposed to doing parameter. So on the other side, it will not be saying rec params. It'll be a little bit different. Now, as always, we're going to do our basic callback, and if it was correct, we need to run our run convo functionality. And if there was an error, I'm going to be passing through an error. Run convo gets ran all the time. It's always checking to see if there's anything new. So every 10 seconds so far is what I have it set for. It's just constantly filling in the conversation, and if it's something that's already there, it just fills in what's already there. It just keeps reposting it until something new shows up. Now we definitely want to do a check token. And let's make sure that our route has that too. Yeah, we've got those. All right, so let's build the message object. So when we post some data, we're going to have that data prepared. And I'm just going to be building an object. Now we'll run our validate functionality to find out if the email field and the message field has something in it, because no reason to fire off a post if there's no data. So it goes to check and the validate functionality to see if these two fields, email and message, have anything in them. If it doesn't have anything in them, that validate function is going to add an error class to the field, and therefore nothing's going to happen. It's just going to pop up both email and message fields need to be filled out and with a red alert, and then it shuts everything down with a return false. Now, if there is never an error added to these input fields, then that means that they do have data ready to go, and so the else would be firing off here. So a successful validation, we're going to define message. And it's going to be our text area with the ID message applied to it. Now, there's a few things I want to be real careful about. I don't want people to put certain characters in there that would break the strings that we're sending. So replacing things like apostrophes with some kind of code numbers, like HTML numbering system. And that way, if they're typing in, I'm basically replacing apostrophes or quotes that would break my string. And so now that I've kind of cleanse it from things that would break the value. I'm going to go ahead and create my post data call and build out my data object. There we go. So my timestamp is also going to be available here. And I need to be specific about the identity. This needs to have a UUID so I can have a way to identify this when it needs to be deleted. Now let's go ahead and clear out the fields that I'm using. So message field, now that I've hit send, I don't need to have that value in my message field, so just clear it out. And this is how we're going to be doing the deletion. For the client side. So let's make up our variables that will just be within this function. Okay, so we'll be going through each message field. It looks like input message, class message. That's not applying to the ID message, which would be the big stage where we type things in. This is actually an input. And definitely don't want brackets there. So we've gone through each one of the checked values. If it's checked, I need to get the ID of that value, and then we're going to push it into select IDs. So every time we have a checked one, we want to get that identifier so we can tell which ones have been checked. Then we go through the select IDs array, and we identify all the conversations based on the UUID. And if they are, so if they actually are in there, we can start figuring out who the initiators are. And if the user here is the initiator, then we're going to go ahead and let it know that this has already been viewed. So they clicked it, and that's been viewed. Now we determine who, based on the conversation, who the recipient was. And if the recipient is the user email, then we're going to click them as viewed. So we don't really know who's clicking what. We'll find out based on who's logged in and who the recipient and initiator was of the actual conversation. And at this point, we've covered both the bases. If they're one or the other, we're going to say add the viewed to the initiator. And like I said, once the initiator and recipient both have the -viewed applied to them, we're going to delete that. And here it goes to ask. If it has -viewed within the initiator and -viewed within the recipient, here's where we perform our delete. And also we want to pass that token over. And here's our callback. And once we do the callback, we actually just want to run the conversation without the message that we saved, because we just deleted it. So now that it's deleted, we run the whole thing and get it out of here, because we'll refresh our whole stage. Now, if they both haven't viewed it, only one of them has, we're going to go ahead and do a put. And so we're just going to edit the data to let it know that one of the individuals has viewed it, not both. But we need to save that so that when the other one has, then it will be ready to delete. And of course, run convo, just so we're all on the same page. We're going to have the latest once this function is, or once this call is finished. And we reset this conversation to nothing. All right. Okay. Now let's also do a filter for contacts. This is something we're going to do locally. It looks like I've started to write this thing without the actual function call. So this is just the meat of the function. And it looks like I come back around and add to it. So we're going to go through all the original convos. And push them into the temp list. So if you contacted, you was default, run the for loop. If it doesn't, view contact does not equal default, then put that email into the value. And we'll reset it in case it had viewed. Okay, we'll go through each of the conversations initiators, and we'll take out the viewed and all the recipients of each of the conversations. We're going to be taking out the viewed as well. Oh, it's okay. So if view contact, which is our active content, equals initiator or recipient, we need to push that view contact into the original convos at this iteration. So we'll be updating the conversation. With temp list. And let's go ahead and wrap this thing, hopefully, in a function. There we go. So basically, we're just making sure that we have everybody's email address in the conversation list. Now, this is where we're going to be checking for messages all the time, because we really obviously have no idea when someone's going to text us. So this thing just runs a loop like every 10 seconds and says, it asks if there's anything new and refreshes. I wouldn't really worry too much about the 10 seconds. If anything, go take a look at YouTube in the network and see how often it reaches out to its home base via API. And you'll find out that asking your server or something every 10 seconds really isn't that big of a deal. Especially when there's not a lot of data going back and forth. It's just looking for, for the most part, that's how much data could you possibly fit on this thing? Just a few kilobytes. So as you can see here, I'm setting interval, and it's just going to run. This is not a set timeout. This is an interval. And every time useEffect comes around, it's going to fire this off, and then I'll clear it, and then it'll do it again. So it's an ongoing search for new messages or something that's been deleted, and then that'll be an update. It's basically always looking for an update. Let's just go ahead and put the JSX together for this messenger. It's pretty small. You're going to have a drop-down menu with everybody who's been involved in any communication with you. You're going to have basically the field of who you like to email, and obviously you're going to have your messages, your text box, which will be ID'd as message, and then you'll have your buttons. So if you'd like to go ahead and send a message, this would be where you'd do it here. So let's just put this all together. It's fairly simple HTML. So this is going to be within Bootstrap's rules, this is a column 6, and it's going to, since it says column -6, it should stay that way even though it went to mobile. So this part of the grid for the contact email will be half, and then this other field here will be the other half. So the call 6 is basically so that it doesn't stack. If I was to put -md-6, then it would stack. And here are the content, the list of contacts we have based on all the conversations we currently are listed. It just goes through, and this is where we populate the select list, so you don't have to type it in. You can just select this person. This is the person I want to send a message to. Now we're going to find out if there's anything in the contact list, if it's something we can map through. Let's go ahead and map through it, and we'll return the options for the select menu. The value obviously will be the contact list name. And so contact is the individual, and then obviously we have to have a key to index, and the contact will be their email address. And if we don't have anybody, there's nobody to map through, then it's just going to be null. Now let's go ahead and put together our stage. So as long as conversation does not equal null, we'll put through a list of all of our conversations within a group list. These are going to be returned in divs. So this group list is actually going to be divs, not line items and not buttons or hrefs. It's divs, and they'll be labeled as a list group item action. And we're adding the class pointer, so when we point on them, it'll act as a button. And here's where we can select them in case we want to clear them out. So you just click on it, and then we know for select post, we'll know it'll pass through the ID of the conversation, and then we'll know which one is selected, and based on what we want to do later on, we can clear it. And we're just clearing out the viewed part, so when they see who they're talking to, it doesn't say like, Internet Web Presence -viewed, because that really wouldn't make any sense to anybody but the application. So I'm just clearing it out for when they see it. So select post is just, I don't need the -viewed in there when I'm searching for the actual individual. That's for something else. That would break the actual system, so I don't want to pass that, even though if it has been viewed or not. It looks like I did not put the class name for deflex and the wrap and the justify content. And if I can recall correctly, I come back around and fix this in the debugging lesson. It's going to be the next one. So just bear with me until I test and you see a mistake. I'll find it. In this, I'm just using the avatar icon, so I think a lot of messengers do that. They'll have the person's icon when you're talking to them. It just looks a little cleaner. And here's going to be our beginning message. It's basically writing out in a line item what the individual is saying. And we want to use our React HTML parser to make sure that the HTML has been sanitized, I guess is the best word for it, so that they're not writing anything malicious into it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in some more information as to who and from. If I'm not mistaken, I also put in the date. And like I said, even if it's been viewed by an individual, we don't need to show that right here. That's just for the application, so I'm just clearing it out for the individual. It's technically still there as the value. It would be confusing. What people would be like, what does viewed mean? And then just no need to do that. Looks like I spelled hide wrong. And the value of the conversation ID. So like I said, when they click on the checkbox, that conversation ID is going to be recorded, and it will know who has viewed this. And then here will be the buttons that we'll need for the messenger to work. And here's our send message. Spelled wrong, of course. There we go. And then here would be our clear. When we click this, it's anything that's been selected. It's going to be cleared out. So it's going to go looking for check marks. And if that UUID is a check mark, then it'll be cleared out within the list. And here's our text area with the ID of message. So if you want to type something in, you'll be able to see it here before hitting send. No reason to have that in there. Okay, let's go into our users module. So the users module is it's for styling your app. Like, so you can have your own banner, you can have your own avatar, you can select what kind of theme from Bootstrap you'd like to use for your app, so you can kind of tailor it to fit what you like. And that's what this is basically all those little details that are going to be your preferences. So they're not really key when you log in so much because you'll have defaults and then you'll be able to tailor it after you log in and create a user. But once you've logged in and you want to start tailoring, this will come in play. And this is going to be in the toggle selection in your footer. So you'll be to access this is the same place you would access your, to change your password or to even delete your user account. As you go down to the footer, you click on you click on your name with the little cog, the gear next to it, and it'll pop up all these. The footer will expand, and you'll see all these options to change your theme and your avatar and your banner. So they're at the bottom of the page. And as you can see here, I'm just preparing a couple of things that I'm passing over, like config, so that the user will have them. Now within this users, we're going to be having, like I said, the avatar. And let's just go ahead and create the API for the avatar. The default is going to be in the image folder, in the public image folder under profile, image JPEG. It's going to be camel cased. So we're going to attempt to find out if that anybody has put anything into the avatar field. Just like anything else, it's kind of a validation. And if there's a value within the avatar field, then we'll use that. And if not, then we'll use the default. And here are the typical try catch. So you will have an error if you try to use this without the try catch. The try catch basically is going to find out if there's an error, and if so, it won't destroy your application. It'll just catch it and throw an error. It's a lot easier than ruining the thing. So try catch is always helpful here. And we'll be updating the avatar if it doesn't equal the default. And here we'll do our Axios put. And we use our user email that's already logged in, the avatar, obviously. We want to throw config in there to make sure that we get the correct token. And obviously, if there's an error, we need to go ahead and write that in as well. So let's go ahead and set our avatar with our function that's been brought in from our parent to whatever our update is. And then we'll have a show alert function fire off if it worked correctly. And then I'd say let's clear out that value in the avatar field so it's not messing around and it looks like it worked. Now if it didn't work, let's go ahead and let it know that the exact opposite. Avatar change failed, and then here's the error. Change success to danger. Or not. I'll have to come back and get it then, because it's going to be a green alert if I don't fix that. And we're going to do the same thing for the banner. That's the other part of the users, is they can tailor their banner to fit whatever they like to. And let's just do a copy paste, because they're exactly the same, other than the word avatar and banner. Yeah, let's just change them out. Hopefully, if I haven't recalled to change that to success, then I'll have to come around. I'll have to remember to come around later. And it looks like I didn't spell banner correctly. I'm missing the E on line 37, or missing the R on line 37, so a few issues. Get that R in there. Banner. Yeah, we don't ever use those, so no reason to bring those in. So it looks like I'll have if it's an error, it's just going to have a green alert until I go fix it later. Now let's go ahead and write the JSX. I don't know what that class is. The leaks upstyle. I think it's supposed to be links unstyled or list unstyled. So that K doesn't belong there. I'll tell you, the more copying, the worse I get with human error. The more copying I do from code. It looks like at this point I'm just getting tired. Okay, so let's just build out this JSX. We're building out the HTML. So here is the avatar. Now we're going to be adding the button that goes with it so we can fire off the update function for the avatar. Yeah, that needs to be closed off. One more bracket or curly brace. And let's get the banner one put together. It's going to be exactly the same. Another input group with the button at the end of the field. Class name obviously is going to have to come back and have a capital on the M for a camel case. The class name here won't understand form group. I know I come back later on and fix that in the next lesson. And let's just go ahead and write the button so we can call out the function when it's been clicked. Yeah, you can tell I'm definitely getting tired. Okay, so let's do update banner right here and put the text in as well. All right, so this module is ready to go. No errors. There's going to be some issues here. As you can see, that we just lost out on all the light. So I'll come in later and fix that. Looks like I fixed that class, but we'll be back to this page to do the error checks, and I'll find a bunch of stuff wrong, and you'll get to watch me. All right, we'll see you next time.